And then finally, the Massachusetts experience, I think it's important to pull out. I do not know what the issues are with intranasal in Canada. I know that naloxone is expensive. I'm assuming you guys have the same issues to deal with as us and lack of resources. But as you can see, $40 to $50 a kit. I think what makes them stand out is the involvement of the state health department and the involvement of medical payers in paying that $40 to $50. Insurance coverage. The little white and clear plastic device you see in the lower left is a separate thing you screw onto this kit. This is one of the forms of naloxone available. If you notice, the strength is 1 milligram per milliliter, so it's 2.5 times stronger than the naloxone we use for injection. And again, 1 cc intramuscular is the initial dose that we recommend. Just so you know, a fair number of reports that we receive, a person has given a second shot, and the typical scenario is they say the first shot didn't work. They gave the second shot and it worked immediately. And what they're saying is, it took a few minutes for the first to work, and I was so freaked out, I was assuming it didn't work, as quite understandably. And the more someone is competent at rescue breathing, the less likely they'll give 2 cc's. The good news is that with intramuscular administration, even 1 or 2 cc's, it appears to be a fairly minor issue of withdrawal if someone does experience that. There is some very small but reported negative effects of too much administration of naloxone in the hospital setting and the precipitation of medical emergency related to blood pressure or kidney function or whatnot. So if you want to look at a downside, it's from administering too much, too fast. And so if people have something to do in those 2 or 3 minutes it takes for it to work, that certainly is a helpful thing in every way. So the struggles ultimately in the United States are what to do with this. In my opinion, until we have OTC, or over-the-counter status with naloxone, if you can walk into any pharmacy in the United States and purchase some intranasal saline for $5 or $6. The same thing should be available with naloxone, hopefully at the same price, and used for both overdose intervention and how do we expand the market, you might ask, in order to attract people to make and sell this stuff and have some cost competition. I think the answer is beginning to see naloxone as a opioid intoxication modulating device. In other words, it isn't just for lethal overdoses. It's for somebody who needs to drive and their pain medicine is a little too strong, or somebody that's not performing well at work because of their pain medicine and they want to take the edge off a little bit. So I'm not saying others should use it on somebody, but someone should have it as an option to use themselves. Intranasally, I think it's a gentle way of onset, and the dose could be made to be just so. This is what, as Michael said, we've had a FDA meeting on a year ago, but no action since then. And it's certainly inconsistent with the United States to develop something that's a generic, available, to make it, even though it's life-saving, to make it available at a low cost, over the counter. Makes perfect sense, especially for medicine with no downside, and but we have not done it yet. So let's hope this federal attention that Michael mentioned in our drug strategy report will actually lead to over-the-counter adoptions. In Washington, for example, in visiting legislators of all kinds on all sides of the aisle, when you explain the issue to them, they usually ask, what? This has been out there for 50 years, it has no downside, and my so-and-so died from, this is ridiculous, why shouldn't everyone have this? So they're getting it, they get it very quickly. My only worry is that there's a revolution that this creates in that. I'll give an example. The Quincy Police Department in Massachusetts adopted naloxone. This lieutenant there, who's mentioned in that drug policy report, trained all his officers how to use this. And where in the United States there's often an antagonistic bent between officers and the community largely because of drug issues, this produces a kind of connection or collaboration, an alliance, if you will, on something very positive. So people now are looking. The Quincy police have reversed 100 overdoses, and people are looking for them. People are seeking them out. People are if there's an overdose event, they may go to the police station. So I would argue that this is the fundamental proper position of the police in the community, to be life-saving first and foremost. And Quincy police have lived up to that creed, and the guy's a 30-year-old narcotics detective, or head of the narcotics division, and he says he has never seen this kind of community acceptance and appreciation, but is thrilled with it, as you might imagine. So other towns in Massachusetts are adopting this, and hopefully this will become a standard there. The other standard which is critical is to adopt naloxone in places where people lose their tolerance to opioids, such as detox, such as incarceration. And these places have sometimes some measurement of 12 to 20 times the rate of overdose within a couple weeks of leaving. So it's a huge group. One of the reasons San Francisco has been as effective as they have is that they have first did a good study of where people were overdosing. As Michael said, this reporting, paying attention to the issue, which we're required to do too under that bill I mentioned, but has not yet been done either for some reason. But in San Francisco they did a study. Pete Davidson did a study, and others that showed you could drop 3 or 4 quarters over the map of San Francisco and cover over 90% of the overdoses. So they targeted these places. And these are SROs. I think I saw similar places in Vancouver when I was there. And by targeting, your overdose prevention efforts, you may be able to make a huge difference, as San Francisco has shown. So, and the issue is cost. When we first started our work in the late 90s, a 10 cc vial of naloxone, our preferred form to give it out in, was $1.43. If you go to the Hospira website now and have no special deal, you may pay as much as $55 for that same thing. And if you go through a medical supply house here, you may pay as much as $95 for one 10 cc vial of naloxone. So although it's generic, although it's been out for 50 years and relatively cheap to make, no increases in raw materials or production methods or anything to speak of, and its price has shot through the roof. The best guess why? In 2008, Hospira developed or happened into a monopoly. And with the absence of competition, the price shot up. Now, I got to say, Hospira has offered us pricing that's allowed us to keep our program, and all it took for me is to dedicate 40% of my time to begging them to do so. But they have done that, and I very much appreciate it. Our program would not exist without it, and we hope that continues. So that's really all I have to say with regards to this. Oh, the revolution. I want to say one other thing about this revolution. Those of us that work in addiction treatment and have for many years are often challenged about the connection between drug users and other people in their life, family, friends, whatever, that are looking out for their health or interested in their health. And an interesting thing that naloxone does revolutionarily in that capacity is it engenders a collaboration or an alliance between a person using drugs and the people around them, and so in a sense is a recovery, in what I would call a recovery-inducing product, an event, an interaction. So, give you an example. Here's this gentleman that lives in Chicago. Is the father of a man in his early 20s who is a heroin user, and he saw him overdose twice and turn blue and so forth, and the father did what he could, but he was horrified enough of this event occurring again, watching his child die, that he sought us out and came out and got naloxone to use with his son, became empowered about that. He will never see his son die of a heroin overdose as long as he has a connection with him to utilize naloxone in case of emergency. So in essence, what we're talking about is removing the shame, stigma, isolation, condemnation that went into his drug use, and for this father accepting the kid for his use, and enough that the kid can say without fear or degradation that he is going to use, Dad can look out for him. And I'll tell you something interesting is that nothing kills a buzz more than having your dad there, as his son said to me. But the collaboration is strong and continues, and I would love to see that continue, first in the U.S. And then, of course, everywhere else, because that, I think, is the impact and revolution of naloxone. All right, that's basically all I have to say. If there are any questions or comments, I'm happy to address them.